The ongoing FIRS versus Rivers State saga continues in a press conference held by Nigeria's Federal Inland Revenue Service on the ongoing value-added tax collection disagreement between the federal government of Nigeria and Rivers State. Matthew Bonjuwola, who is a group lead, Special Tax Operation Group, said that the input-output mechanism of value-added tax won't allow state collection to be technically possible. Let's take a listen to what he said.
It works only at a national level. VAT cannot work at subnational level. And there is no country in the world where VAT works at subnational level. And the reason is because VAT depends on the input-output mechanism. And just to illustrate this, for example, assuming a business person bought an item, let's say in Osun State, and paid VAT, and takes the goods to, let's say, Sokoto State to sell. Remember, this business person had paid VAT when purchasing the product in Osun State. And when selling in Sokoto State, it will charge VAT. And by the operation of the input-output mechanism, this business person will deduct the input tax paid in Osun State from the output tax charged in Sokoto State and remit any difference to the relevant tax authority. In this case, because there is a single tax authority handling VAT, it is the same authority that received the VAT in Osun State that will receive the additional VAT payable in Sokoto State. And so it is easy to work out the input-output mechanism, and there is no issue of the business person being shortchanged. There's no issue of consumers having to pay VAT more than once.
All right, we also have a statement that was put out on Twitter from the governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike. Let's take a look at what he said in talking about fairness. He says in June, 15.1 billion was collected as taxes in Rivers State, but 4.7 billion was given to Rivers State, 46.6 from Lagos, but what was given back to Lagos was 9.3. Kano, however, generated 2.8 and also got 2.8. Have you seen the injustice in this country? I will not be governor forever. It is not about me, but about the system. So let's talk about the system. We have a senior manager, tax regulatory and People Services at KPMG, Aminat Jegede. Thank you so much for joining us, Aminat.
Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic stuff. So starting first off, what do you make of the argument of the input-output mechanism not allowing state collection of VAT to be possible?
Okay, so first of all, there is a merit in the argument that, when the VAT is collected at the federal level, it is easy to work out the input-output mechanism. However, that does not mean that the challenge that the state governments will face would lead to their inability to collect the VAT. Because, the VAT is a tax that has been administered for over 2 decades. So there's been some learnings. There's been things that have been introduced over time to make sure that it is working properly. Are the state governments going to face a challenge with the input-output mechanism? Yes, because just like he explained, if you pay input in one state and the output is collected in another state, then chances are there might be some challenge in offsetting it. Nonetheless, if you look at the tax law that was signed into law, or the VAT that was signed into law by the Rivers State government, it is already envisaged that, this may occur. And the governor has put it there in the law that, you can request for a refund, provided that you bring in the necessary documents. So I don't think that is enough to say that, it will be difficult for state governments to administer the law. It's a challenge, but just like the state governments have had instances with other types of taxes, this can be overcome.
Thank you so much for that. What do you make of the Rivers State governor's comments? Is there room for the sharing formula of VAT amongst the states to be more fair? How do you see that? Okay,
so again, the existing formula is 50 to the state, 35 to local governments, and then 15 to the federal government. And what you find is that this is basically something that was put in place to ensure fairness. However, if you look at the law that was promulgated by the Rivers State, They are pushing for 70% for the states
Right.
and 30% for the local government, but for only collections within Rivers State. If you look at the bill that was presented by the Lagos State government to their assembly, they are pushing for 75-25. So the argument really is to say we want fairness. We want a situation where the states that are generating most of this VAT benefits more from it. So if you look at it, I mean, I know that we may dwell into the matter of fiscal federalism, but again, it is the buoyant states, if I can use that word, that are pushing for this, because in the interest of economic development and to boost their own internal generated revenue, you need to, put some things into place. So yes, there might be an argument to say, let's make it fairer.
Fantastic. You mentioned buoyant states just a second ago. There's a Daily Trust headline, and we looked at this in our newspaper review on the morning show, and we can put that up, that Daily Trust headline for our viewers, where the headline said that, there it is, 30 states risk bankruptcy as Lagos Rivers set for new VAT. So what do you make of this headline? What do you make of the risk, if there is, for less buoyant states? Well, how do you see it?
Okay, there are proponents that have made the argument that for states that do not have enough IGR, they are going to struggle with this new pronouncement that, all states should be generating or should be collecting their own VAT. So yes, but the idea is when the allocation from the federation stops coming, then states will have no choice but to reach out and look for opportunities to increase their IGR. So should we really be crying foul and say that they risk bankruptcy? Absolutely not, because the expectation is that all states are going to put things in place to ensure that they continue to generate revenue to manage their affairs.
But if they, I guess where the Daily Trust is coming from, if they don't do that, if they don't put it in place,
definitely,
then they're in trouble.
Definitely.
What do you make of the FIRS seeking to have VAT collection move to the exclusive list as disclosed by Governor Wike of Rivers State? What do you make of that?
Okay, so again, I think the FIRS is really just trying to protect its territory in the sense that based on the ruling of the FHC in the FIRS and Accountant General of the Federation versus Rivers State ruling, it is clear that the current exclusive list as you have it does not empower the FIRS to collect VAT. And the only way that can be resolved is actually by including it. However, the case is already in court. So the first things first is we have a judicial precedent that needs to be followed. If peradventure, before the case in court is resolved and that is done, then the question will now be, when will this take effect? Because even if the National Assembly finally includes it in the exclusive list, then the current issue, which is basically that state governments are empowered to be collecting the VAT, needs to be resolved. So it's something that I believe there will need to be a lot of deliberations and engagements between all the stakeholders.
And I believe it still has to go to, I think, 2/3 of the National Assembly
definitely.
and then 2/3 of the states' assemblies as well.
Definitely.
So it's the very same states that they're... Interesting
so it's
stuff.
really, so it's really something that there will need to be an agreement on how this will be taken going forward.
Interesting stuff. So I think you mentioned this earlier. It's been said that this is a test of fiscal federalism. That's what this is about. What you agree?
I think I totally agree. Because the truth of the matter is the issue of fiscal federalism is something that over time in Nigeria has been subject to a lot of debates. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning, it's really about what are states putting into place to ensure that they are sustainable, that their economic development is sustained. So what you find is if you look at the National Bureau of Statistics report for IGR for different states, only about 6 states can actually hold their own when you look at that. So we're saying all states need to at least have some more efforts to ensure that they stay and stand on their own. And again, just like Governor Wike is saying, the effort or the idea is that for states that are buoyant, again, if I can use that word, they need to be able to enjoy more of their activities. And the expectation really also is that this will boost economic development, because what you find is that the states that have a higher level of IGR, they're actually more developed than the other states. So perhaps it's something that the country should be looking looking forward to.
And interesting enough, there are some states like the Gombe State governor, there was a report, Gombe State was saying, they'll be your brother's keeper. Some states want the status quo to remain as it
Absolutely.
is, simply because they're not buoyant enough.
Absolutely.
While we're on the subject of tax collection, since we have you here, I did want to ask about the informal sector. That is taxing the informal sector. How can that be improved here in Nigeria?
Okay, so, it's very interesting that a lot of people actually think that the informal sector is not being adequately taxed. I usually tell people that it's incorrect to think that they are not being taxed, because what you find is that the informal sector is being taxed. In fact, they are complaining of multiple taxation. However, does the state, the tax they pay, does it go to the federal government or the state government, as the case may be? So what you find is your typical motorist or a market woman, she pays something in the market. She pays something to, someone. And as far as she is concerned, she's paying taxes. But what needs to be done is actually to ensure that there is a record. Because for most of these people, even though the taxes that they pay, they get a form of informal receipt, if I can use that to show that, I've paid some form of tax. It doesn't go into the state coffers. So the state government will say that they're not paying taxes. However, what we can do is, number one, they need to be educated. They need to be informed. There needs to be a lot of stakeholder engagement to ensure that this is the reason why you're paying taxes, for the benefit of the state. I mean, Lagos State does that a lot when they say it pays you to pay your tax.
Right.
But for the informal sector, there are so many other things that can be done. I mean, normally I get some alerts on my phone to tell me, oh, have you paid this, especially with everything that is going on. You get some form of encouragement or notification to tell you that, go and do this. So for the people in those sectors, it needs to be done. I'm aware that for Lagos State, there's a token that they pay to the LIRS that enables them to obtain a tax clearance certificate. So that's been in place. Let's have adequate information. Let's leverage on technology. Let's, encourage these people to say the tax you pay. And again, the other bit is for people to voluntarily comply and pay their taxes. They've got to see what the tax is being used for. Yeah.
That's the accountability.
Accountability. So everything has to work together, and then let them know that it's for the benefit of the whole country.
Very quickly, I will back my minute to go. The pandemic, did that setback? Was there a setback with the impact of the pandemic on tax collections and so on and so forth? Do you think?
I don't really think so. When it comes to collection, no. But when it comes to the ease of submitting returns, perhaps, yes, there was a bit of challenge in that. In the terms of collection, we've all gone digital.
Right.
It's easy to sit in your room and, make a transfer.
Technology
has made it really easy for, tax collection. But what now matters is how much tax are you supposed to pay, and how are you paying it, and how are you filing your returns. Interestingly, the FIRS has made some progress in that regard with the introduction of the Tax Pro Max, wherein companies can now file their returns online. So yes, I don't really think the pandemic affected collection.
Right.
However, when it comes to the ease of filing returns, then there was some challenge in that regard.
Great conversation. Aminat Jegede, Senior Manager, Tax Regulatory and People Services, KPMG. Really great. Thank you so much for informing us on taxes.